All right, I don't want to wait any longer. Good evening. My name is Paul Rangel, and welcome to the Manhattan Community Board 3 Transportation, Public Safety, and Environment Committee meeting for August 11th, 2020. Time is now 6:33 p.m. If anybody who's on this call could please list your name and your affiliation in the chat box that will be used for our attendance sheet. Your name and your affiliation in the chat box. That would be greatly appreciated. It is for our attendance purposes. And if you choose to want to speak on a specific agenda item tonight, please also note that in the chat box. And we will close that up by 7 o'clock if you want to speak on to any agenda item. At this moment, I want to have all the members of the committee introduce themselves. And we will go starting with the vice chair.
Hi, good evening. Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Michelle Cooper-Smith and I am a Lower East Side resident.
Hi everybody, Lee Berman, lifelong resident of the Lower East Side.
Hi, David Crane. I live up East Village near Tompkins Square Park.
Being Ellen Law, a resident of Chinatown.
Dale Goodson, 12th and Avenue A.
I'm just having members of the committee introduce themselves.
Oh, I'm sorry, missed that.
It's okay. Thank you. Well, anybody else on the call from the committee? I thought I saw Tariq and Wendy.
Sorry, I just joined in. What did I miss?
Doing introductions of the committee.
Oh, hi, I'm Wendy. I live right here in Chinatown. I've been living here for like about 25 years of my life, and I'm happy to learn and hopefully help out with anything I can.
Thank you. Is Tariq still on the call? No? All right, so we're gonna move right into the first agenda item, which is the approval of minutes. Is there a discussion on the minutes from the July meeting? I'm going to take everyone's silence as no discussion. So Lee, take it away.
All right, for the first vote, Paul Rangel.
Yes.
Okay. Michelle Cooper-Smith.
Yes.
David Crane.
Yes.
Wendy Lee.
Yes.
Lee Berman is yes. Felicia Cruikshank. Felicia, you there?
I don't see her, Lee.
Okay, Ellen Lowe
Yes.
and Tariq Ramos. Tariq, we saw you there.
I thought I saw Tariq earlier on the call. He may have dropped off. I thought I saw him earlier. Right now he's a no, I guess.
Okay.
He might be having connection issues.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Lee. All right, so we're going to go right to our next agenda item, which is the presentation from the Lower East Side Partnership and Tim Lachlan. Tim, I'm going to give you the floor on time. Please explain to us what's going on.
Hi, everybody. How are you? I'm not sure if you guys had those submissions with the diagram that we might be able to share. Paul, I don't know if those are on the, or if I could share those somehow. Do we know if we have those submissions?
Yeah, give me a second. I'm pulling it up.
Thank you, sir.
Do you want me to stop sharing my screen, Paul?
Yeah, for now, and I'll share I'll share my screen.
There we go.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know if we can zoom out a little just so you can see the whole thing. But It's okay. We'll work through it, Paul. For those of you I don't know, my name is Tim Lachlan. I'm the president of the Lower East Side Partnership. Some of you may be aware that there was a conversation scheduled for the committee back in March to discuss the potential establishment of a pedestrian plaza on Broome Street between Allen and Orchard Streets. The original inception of that proposal came out of a planning process that we conducted related to visioning for the Orchard corridor and some of those small side streets back in 2013. And part of that process, as we discussed with the committee back at that time, was that as elements potentially came forward, we would bring those to the committee for discussion. So currently we have the Neckdown extension in front of the Tenement Museum's Visitor Center, which you can see here is at Delancey and Broome, highlighted in blue in the picture. And then there was a proposal to include a pedestrian plaza down on Broome Street. At the time, pre-COVID, that proposal was related to a unique bike parking pilot that DOT was working on. With the pandemic, that pilot has been discontinued at this time, and we do not believe that it will be brought back, but of course, we're waiting to hear. In the midst of that conversation, the Tenement Museum approached our organization about potentially working with DOT to address some of the concerns that they had related to reopening their operations. Cultural institutions right now cannot operate, and when they are able to operate, it's likely that they will be operating solely outdoors. You may be aware that the Tenement Museum has multiple different properties on that block. They have a visitor center on Delancey. They have a museum property at mid-block. As you see here, all those properties in red. And then they have another building at the corner of Orchard and Broome, each of which are nationally designated as federal parkland. So likely when the museum reopens in the near future, what will occur is that the tours they will be able to offer and the programming they will be able to offer would all happen outdoors. As you all know, regulations and things around those operations change daily, but right now it is anticipated from my conversations with them that they will likely pre-book groups, so not an individual, but a group of people will be able to say, there's 6 of us, we're all going to come and we're going to participate in the tour. The museum in their planning process is assuming and estimates that it will likely be residents of the 5 boroughs and not significant kind of influx of folks from outside of the city. But to really be able to group people effectively and to maintain that distance, additional pedestrian space in and around the museum was requested. And so what the proposal seeks to do is essentially extend the Neckdown or curb extension, which is just an extension of the sidewalk from the top of the museum, the full length of the block, down to the other properties, and connect to a pedestrian plaza space that would prohibit, oh, probably going a little low there, that's the street seat that's existing on Orchard, right there is where we're looking at. So that Neckdown extension would come down and it would connect to a pedestrian plaza space that is the full width of the street, allowing a little bit more space to have, if you can imagine, groups of 6 people plus a tour guide, distanced, starting and stopping together, and then being able to efficiently walk up the street to the museum properties and still be able to stand in and around the museum, stand and stop and look at buildings, and do so without having a crowding condition for those stop and end points. There's no commercial activity in and around this area outside of what exists today on the street seat related to the open restaurant program. And there would be an elimination of muni-meter parking if this proposal was approved. I'm not sure, Paul, there's a letter that was sent to the board and submitted by the Tenement Museum that basically supported this request and said, while it would be great to extend that curb extension full block, they understand that that is a significant amount of parking and would be able to continue what they believe to be successful operations with a slightly reduced footprint, utilizing a portion of that curb extension and potentially the pedestrian plaza that would be created. And so really that is why we are here today. I think that this is clearly a baseline plan, schematic wise, to allow for just visualization of all those elements and how they would connect to each other. Should the community board and the committee support efforts to move forward, we would work with DOT to really drill down to the logistics of what specific elements would be used here in these locations. I just note that there are just unique operational and logistical challenges right now within the city, as you can imagine, and as you all are seeing. So it wouldn't necessarily be, that standard process of, here is surety on exactly what treatments like surfacing, planters, et cetera. There'd be a little back and forth with our ability to execute that. But I think the goal of the conversation was to see if there was support based on the museum's request so that we could work in partnership with DOT to effectuate the very specific elements that would be required to make that change. I would also just note that there has been a standing concern, and it goes back to 2013 and it continues today, related to traffic that is attempting to cut over to the bridge. And so we still continue to receive concern, and certainly something that the museum has been concerned with respect to cars making a right turn onto Broome and then quickly making a left onto Orchard and trying to speed up to Delancey to get in and around the bridge. This proposal, while the specific use temporary in nature to the museum's modified operations, which we anticipate will happen for the foreseeable future, will also have the added benefit of preventing that condition. And so that's really kind of forcing vehicular traffic from Grand up to make that turn from Allen onto Delancey at the light where it should be. But that is, in a nutshell, the proposal that we're discussing. And again, really the goal of the conversation was to bring that to the committee, given the fact that those applications were already in play and in essence for another use in March. We wanted to come back and discuss what we believe to be a unique kind of set of conditions that could allow that space to work in a slightly different way and importantly assist what arguably is Lower East Side's preeminent cultural institution in their modified operations.
Thank you, Tim. Before I move to any questions, does the committee still need this letter up so I can just switch out of it, or we're good? All right, I'm gonna just stop my share and we can put the previous notes back up. Just a reminder to everybody on the call, 7 o'clock we will shut down potential, if you want to sign up for potential comments on any of the agenda items. I am going to move forward with the committee for questions. Can the committee, whoever would like to start from the committee who has any questions, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Go ahead, Michelle. I see.
Sorry, I can't raise my hand. I'm a co-host. Thanks, Tim, for coming to talk about this. I remember, as you mentioned, it was supposed to be on the March agenda, so I thought about it back then. I guess my question is, are there other, I know like the Tenement Museum is probably one of the only establishments on that side of Orchard Street and also on Broome besides Dudley's across the street. Have you spoken to any other proprietors in the neighborhood if they agree with this? I mean, I spend a lot of time in that area, so I'm very familiar with it, but I'm just wondering if there's any opposition to it from other businesses in the nearby environs.
I have not heard opposition from other businesses. There's a limited amount that would be directly impacted, especially as we talk about Orchard Street specifically. Really the backs of the buildings are the back of house operations. Kanji Village is an example of somebody that we would really need to work with closely if that planning process was to move forward, just to make sure that they're kind of like back of house and garbage operations could occur within a modified framework without that adjacent curb access. With respect to the others, I think there's a couple more parking and transit access with respect to cars or bikes, you really can get there from Allen and from Orchard. So, the limited nature of kind of that short nature of the block, I don't think provides too much of an impediment for commercial use. I think we've had too much formal engagement, to be frank, but certainly something we would do, as part of that formal planning process, should, the community board decide it's something they want to try to move forward with to understand more about the options.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, and I'll just point out that I think that if there are concerns about how this will bottleneck traffic elsewhere, I mean, the street is closed very often now, and it does not seem to be impacting traffic on Allen Street as far as I can tell. And Broome Broome and Essex is a very dangerous intersection to begin with. So the less traffic that comes there, I think the better. I mean, I've almost gotten hit walking my dog there many, many times. So I support that. And the Neckdown extension on Orchard Street, I mean, is pretty minimal. I took a video of there the other day. I mean, there was one car parked. It's not like it's being heavily used, especially right now. So I don't really see a problem with that, but I look forward to seeing the additional planning around it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michelle. Lee Berman.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for coming. Thanks for presenting this. My question is about outreach to the residents on Broome Street, as well as the residents, not just commercial, but residents of Orchard that Michelle just mentioned. What outreach has there been to the folks who live on Broome between Allen and Orchard, and what feedback have you gotten?
The outreach that we're doing is noticing the community board meeting today. So we typically use the community board agenda process and these public meetings to garner community concern or residential support or concern about this. So we're looking forward to hearing any of those concerns today.
David Crane.
Yeah, Tim. So how do you think this might impact one way or another the impact of nightlife on the area?
So look, it's an interesting question, David. With respect to specific operations, there aren't adjacent licensed establishments within the zone that are not already operating in DOT approved open restaurant locations. So this wouldn't, if it were to move forward, expand any commercial operations in a modified way. Certainly, there is a balance that has to be achieved, and obviously there are concerns about activity, especially as they relate to things happening after 11. We've been working closely with PD on those issues, but no means a full guarantee here. Anytime there is public space, there is the potential for all kinds of folks to use it. I don't think in this case we're doing anything really except eliminating parking. And the absence of vehicular traffic, in my view, wouldn't necessarily exacerbate a specific condition. Clearly that you can't maintain that there wouldn't be anything or anything that pops up, just like there is throughout the community, but there wouldn't be an expansion of commercial activity within this space.
Thank you, David. So my question would be, Tim, what would you actually just tell the community who thinks this is a means to a different kind of end?
I'm sorry, Paul, I couldn't hear you on that last piece there.
There's a lot of people from the community who think this is about something different, right? Not necessarily about the tenement museum, but there's a lot of complaints coming down there about the drinking and the nightlife, and just basically following up on David's question. There's a lot of people in the community who feel this is a means to a different kind of end.
Yeah, look, I can't. I can't speak. This is a means to a different kind of end. I don't think that the Department of Transportation would consider this if that was the case. I don't think that the Tenement Museum would have asked us to present that if this is the case, and I don't think that we would present that if we believe that to be the case. Are there concerns about activity on the street? Absolutely. Are we, trying our best to address those with the relevant agencies that have jurisdictional authority? Yes. I think there is, of course, a balance there between activity that is clearly not acceptable and outside of regulatory parameters that we have for modified operations, and a difference between, having activity of any kind on the street that is regulated and permitted. So I can't, there is no commercial activity that would be expanded by a proposal like this. And so all I can do is present you, with options and information to deal with other issues outside of nightlife.
Thank you. Any other questions from the community? From the committee, David Crane, I see your hand up.
Actually, I want to hear from the community.
I was getting to that. Okay.
No, I know you were, and I was going to speak, but then I thought, wait, I'm going to wait. So I'm going to wait.
Okay, no problem. So anybody, before I go right to the community, is any, okay, I'm going to rewind for a quick second. I just want to remind everybody that the chat room is not an opportunity to have a side meeting or to make general types of comments. I will get to the community in a moment, but the chat room is mainly used for attendance purposes and if you want to speak to a specific agenda item. I am going to go to the community if you wanted to speak to agenda item number 2. I understand there's a lot of opposition to this proposal and there are people who want to speak against it tonight. I will get to you. Give me 1 second. I will get right to it in the order that you have chosen to speak. All right. So since the committee doesn't have any other questions, I'll come back to it. I believe I see a person, Hope Beach. Am I saying that correctly? Your hand is up.
That is accurate. Thank you. Sorry, that's me in the chat. There's a power outage where I am and my cell phone is literally about to die and I did not want my comments on behalf of the Orchard Street Block Association to go unheard. So I apologize for that.
No, it's okay.
And yeah, this has been such an issue, this area, and it's already, the bid has stood for maintaining this corner and it's like a joke. You see it in the news, you see it everywhere. I get so many complaints from residents, that there's music, there's people well past 11, and this making it like officially permanent, though we're suffering through the open streets, and God bless the restaurants. I want all these businesses that are responsible to survive and thrive. It's all an important part of the neighborhood, but it just stinks of, not actually being for residents and any of these open streets. Not one resident was contacted in this neighborhood to find out if we wanted it. And, it just shouldn't be that these things happen without residents having their point of view heard. And I think that, to your point, there are quite a few residents that do not want to see any more permanent open spaces taken over in this way.
Thank you. Before I have Tim respond, I'm just going to remind the community that you'll have 2 minutes to issue your statement, and I will move on to the next person. Tim, thank you, Hope. Tim, do you want to respond to that?
No, I appreciate those concerns completely. I think that there's just I guess a distinction of programs, especially as it relates to open streets, right? There's a couple different pieces of a puzzle. One is all Lower East Side streets, Orchard, Ludlow, all those side streets are 25 feet in width. The typical condition is an 8-foot parking lane on either side with a 9-foot travel lane in the middle to get us to 25. I think that part of the concern and things get combined together, which I could understand, is that somehow open streets is encouraging further commercial activity, especially at the Orchard and Broome locations. All of the outdoor restaurant operations were approved independently through the open restaurant program. There's only one location that has a special approval through open streets to operate additional space, and that is Sticky Rice, because the normal condition that they have is a fire hydrant and a bike rack in front of their location. So I hear those concerns, and I definitely understand them, but there's just a distinction between, I think, open streets and open restaurants. And so really what we find is that the absence of vehicular traffic is preventing some other conditions that we've seen throughout the neighborhood, where we have vehicles traveling in, parking, and having loud music and engaging in what is illegal activity with either the consumption or sale of alcohol from their vehicles. And at least, without that vehicular traffic, we could control that. So I think that those concerns are together. And again, I can understand the concern with respect to permanence. All we can say is that, the normal regulatory environment for commercial activity in any type of public pedestrian space is quite significant with respect to outreach and engagement in RFP. And so I think that would be hopefully something that there would be a process around that moving forward if that was a concern about commercial activity in the future.
Okay. David, I'll go back to you.
Yeah, I was gonna, so maybe I misunderstood this proposal. It's creating a pedestrian space, a no vehicle space. It is not going to be creating commercial space. Is that correct?
Correct. This is solely creating
Okay.
either.
Right. So my fear was not about creating more space for there being, restaurants to be opening up. My fear is of creating more space for, they're in my neighborhood too. It's not as bad as down there, but for the, drunk hooligans walking around, after midnight, people in very large, very loud bar voices, and I kid you not, actually hearing someone say, "I'll hold your hair," Anyway, that was what I was more referring to earlier. And I was wondering if the Block Association had, you're closer to the situation. What actually is your fear in a pedestrian zone as opposed to, a commercial zone, to call it that? Because it won't be that, my understanding.
If you're asking me, the fear is that that's like an approved new space for like the runoff. Like Dudley's will just use all that space, much like Barbelli uses up all 4 sections around them because there's no other restaurants. So they just like encourage more people to buy and stay, even though people are supposed to buy and go. And then once, even before open streets, like it was, not great down there. This was all building, and this is just like exposed, like, that every new business on Orchard Street is a licensed business these days. And it's not pleasant for the community, even when it's not open streets. So this is just looking ahead at that. It's more.
So I understand. So it's public drinking. It's creating a place for public drinking. And we do have that up here as well, near the park. So I understand you now.
I'm sorry. I saw Andrew Gilbert before, who had signed on, wanted to speak to this agenda item. Is he still on the line?
It looks like he dropped off, Paul.
Yeah, okay. I didn't see anybody else in the community who wanted to comment on this agenda item. Did you see anybody, Michelle? I didn't see anybody in the chat room. Okay.
I do. I'm trying to make myself known, but I guess I can't. Elena Umano, can you see me? I've unmuted myself.
Okay, I'll give you 2 minutes to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah, whenever these kinds of spaces open up, their use during the day differs radically from their use at night. I'm just going to reinforce what the last speaker said. It's obvious that what's going on Orchard is going to spill over into this new space that's going to open up. It's going to be tons of people there drinking, having fun, maybe doing illegal things. It doesn't matter, but there are people who live there whose lives will be severely disrupted. And to gloss over that and pretend that people in the community aren't upset about it and pretend that there's been an outreach, I think is a bit disingenuous. There hasn't been much of an outreach. And while a pedestrian walkway and avoiding traffic jams going to the bridge all seem very good, as soon as you open up this stuff, people who like to hang out all night are going to be rushing in. It's obvious to everybody. We've seen what's gone on in the Lower East Side over the last few years. and I see what goes on Orchard Street. These are people don't wear masks, et cetera, don't socially distance, et cetera. I don't see how anybody can argue against that. It's not like barricades are going to be put up at night so people can't hang out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, just a brief reminder to the community and to the public. If you could write your name and your affiliation in the chat room for attendance purposes, we may not know who you are. We want to make sure
Write it where?
in the chat room, just your name and your affiliation with the neighborhood. If you're a resident or you're a business owner, if you could put that in the chat room, that would be great. This is for everybody who's on the call tonight for our attendance purposes. I'm going to go back to the committee. Lee Berman, I believe you have your hand up.
Yeah, this question would be, is there somebody from DOT, or if not, then Tim, is there a way of, on Broome Street, the Pedestrian Plaza proposal, is there a way of having it just during the day so that at night it is not usable as a place for open drinking, which we are all certain it will become, whether that means opening it back up to traffic and parking? Is there a non-permanent way so that the museum could use Broome Street only during the day?
Jessica, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so hi, Jessica Kronstein, Public Space, DOT Public Space. So we do that in some instances. So with our seasonal street program, like at Doyers, which is also within your district. So it is open to pedestrians during the day and open to traffic at night for carting and deliveries. I think that is a little bit different because it's much narrower than Broome, but I think that's certainly something we could take a look at. As Tim said, you know, none of the materials have been decided, and I think all of these details are yet to be determined. But I think based on all the concerns that we're hearing today, that's certainly something that we would look at.
Thank you.
Paul, do you want me to address anything?
Oh, I was just about to tee you up. Go right ahead, Susan.
Okay, so I just thought I'd mention a few things because a lot of the things residents have brought up are huge issues that we are dealing with. I'd say most of the open streets or open dining, most of it has provided better conditions than in the previous phase. However, there are a few areas that are still real problems. We have on Upper Avenue A, we have some of those we're spending a lot of time on. And also I've gotten pictures of Broome Street that show that, you know, some of the businesses there are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I've heard someone on Orchard also. We have brought this up. We actually brought it up today in the District Service Cabinet meeting. It is a constant issue. The 7th Precinct is overwhelmed with 311 calls. It is good that people are calling 311. Please keep doing that. And they are responding. They were down there last weekend with the SLA. Another business, Last Lop, lost their license. I asked the precinct to keep bringing the SLA down. The thing is that there's so many things happening at once that I think things are getting lumped together that are kind of separate problems. Nobody should be using on the sidewalk. The only place on the sidewalk that can be used commercially, legally, is adjacent to the building. So if there are people standing there and drinking, which I absolutely believe there are, I have confirmed today there's still an increase in the 20 to 29-year-old contacting COVID, and there has to be serious enforcement on it. I think it's a totally separate issue than I think we're discussing now, but I want to urge residents and to please continue calling 311, but to also go on the SLA website. There is a special section for these kinds of problems because we do need social distancing. We do need people seated, not standing and huddled together drinking. So I'm urging people to go on the SLA website. And I am trying to get another email for the Mayor's Office of Special Operations, which is a multi-agency task force dealing with this. We absolutely need to have a lot better enforcement in certain, I'm gonna say hotspot areas. I don't see it as the same issue that's being presented. I think people will be on the streets, whether it's sidewalk or street. I think they're gonna be there until we have effective enforcement.
Thank you, Susan. David Crane.
If these were normal times, if COVID hadn't changed everything, I would be in support of this. I was when the idea came up, many years ago, to help with the traffic situation and the museum. But this is going to be with us a while, and I don't think I can support this until at least next year when this problem goes away. I hope. It's really bad. The crowds hanging out. It resembles to me public plazas that in Italy and the Netherlands, where where I've been, where there is just drinking going on. It's like it is a crowd that is drinking in a very nice open environment. And I think that not having cars, I don't know. I'm overthinking this point at this point now. I don't know if not having cars is going to create that environment more. I will say that environment is down there, and it is up here on, adjacent to Tompkins Square Park, right around the corner from me. I have too much sympathy with the residents to take a risk on doing this at this time.
Thank you, David. I'm going to take one more comment from the community. Susie Schropp, am I saying that correctly?
Yes, Susie Schropp. I'm from 8 St. Mark's Place, and I've seen the activity on Avenue A. And I'm glad David is, what was it, David? Yeah, he brought up the comparison to Europe, and I'm European. And I can tell you there's a difference in culture and how people approach the whole drinking culture thing. Here, it seems like the minute something is open, it goes way overboard. I feel like there could be a way that this could work, but somehow it just completely goes out of control, and it's just not happening here. So I think the comparison to Europe is not quite correct, because there's a completely different attitude, and people conduct themselves differently overall as a society.
That is true. And also some of the places I'm thinking of are historically have been entertainment zones, like for decades, if not centuries, as opposed to Orchard Street. That was more in my mind. And yeah.
Can I ask David a question? Paul?
Yeah, go right ahead, Lee.
But David, right now I'm leaning towards certainly not opening up Broome Street to this. Are you suggesting not only not allow Broome Street to be converted, but the Neckdown on Orchard Street as well? You'd be against at this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I hadn't thought that through that much. I suspect that Broome Street is more of the problem in the proposal. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's taking away a lane of parking on Orchard Street. I don't know. I don't go down there. I haven't been. I mean, certainly not at night. I haven't ever been down there. So I'm not really sure. I would like to see the proposal come back, possibly.
Okay, I would agree. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Lee. Ellen, go ahead.
I'm just wondering whether or not there's a representative from the Tenement Museum. I'm just curious in regards to their perspective and how much of a need this is, considering that it might impact what little business they are able to generate as museums are closed in the city for the foreseeable future.
Ellen, I'm going to speak a little bit to that. I don't think there's anybody on from the Tenement Museum. I did ask Susan earlier if there was going to be anyone on. Susan, could you clarify that for me? I didn't think there was going to be anyone.
No, we certainly didn't invite anyone. You know, we have the letter representing the Tenement Museum. What I do know from previous work with the Tenement Museum, they tend to get crowds. The original Neckdown was put there for the Tenement Museum because they get a lot of crowds. It's sort of the destination business of the area, and they didn't want the crowds blocking the sidewalk, you know, and access for everyone going back and forth. So, you know, that was originally because, you know, because the Tenement Museum, you know, did request it, I guess, with the support of the other businesses.
Okay.
But I would go for their letter. I mean, they sent the letter, so I'd just assume that represents him.
I did send the letter to the entire committee earlier today. If you want to pull it up, that is the only thing that is representing the Tenement Museum outside of the presentations, but that's the only thing that is setting it up. Just sort of reminder for everyone, we're trying to shut off the chat room because we don't use the chat room as separate conversations for committee meetings or full board meetings. We just use it generally as an attendance feature. We have heard comments from everybody from the public today. We do understand what's going on. I'm going to take this will actually be my final comment from the community on this before we move on. Hope you have one final comment. I see your hand up. I will go to you and you will be the last one.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just speaking to the woman who mentioned Europe. First of all, most cities, or a lot of them, close down at midnight completely. So we stay open till 4, which allows that time to bleed. And like David said, you know, I've personally lived on Orchard Street 15 years, and a lot of our residents have lived there longer. The reason I moved to Orchard Street is because there weren't any bars or restaurants. And since then, what's exploded in the past 10 years is this. And so, you know, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of where we've chosen to live and what's been allowed to, you know, happen around us. So that's another piece of the open plaza point that many residents have expressed has happened to them since they moved there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So there is a potential draft resolution we can look at for tonight. We can adopt it and look at it, and we can move and vote on it, or if we want to see it. I don't know if the committee wants to make a motion to bring it to the floor.
Motion.
All right, Michelle. Michelle, you had your hand up before. I'm sorry. I know you're trying to say something. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to comment on sort of the crowding issue. I think part of the reason why there's so much crowding is because we lack open space. And I'm not sure if it's a culture difference so much as a availability of the space that we have in our city. I live here. I know what Broome Street looks like at night and during the day. You know, we don't have a lot of space here in New York, especially in this neighborhood. And I think that having more space would mean people can spread out. I mean, if anyone's walked on Canal Street, for example, when it's closed for open restaurants, it's a bigger street. There's more space. Like when we have more space, people are respectful because they have the space to do so. And by restricting that space, it just exacerbates the problem, I think. And the other point I wanted to make, and it sort of piggybacks on what Susan said, is that, you know, it's hard for these restaurants and businesses to be both serving customers and police in a lot of ways. You know, even when if I went to a restaurant and you're waiting for somewhere to sit down, like your natural inclination is to get a drink and wait. But legally, you're not allowed to do that now. And so you're putting that restaurant in jeopardy by doing the natural thing that you would do in any regular day in New York. So I think it's just like, it's a hard situation. And I don't think that there's any one person to blame here. It's, you know, an unprecedented situation. So I just ask that everyone has an open mind about the possibilities that we have here rather than than, you know, automatically saying no, or thinking that no is the only answer when we could, you know, try to be more thoughtful about it. And, you know, I would ask DOT to do that as well. The more space we have, the better is my feeling. And so saying no sort of closes us off to that. Yeah, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. Since you made the motion, we can pull up the resolution. Just a comment to the public. The rules I'm saying are not arbitrary. I'm not making them up as I go along. They are voted on by the community board for Zoom meetings overall. So we do disable the chat feature after a certain time. And we did post the rules earlier on today at the beginning of the meeting. So they're not arbitrary. They're not made up. I'm not making them up as I go along. So are we able to get the resolution up? Do you need me to pull it up, Michelle? Do you have
it? Maybe, yeah, hold on, let me just pull it up. I just unshared so you don't see my email. Hold on. You can see it, Paul?
Yeah, it's up. I see it. Can the rest of the committee see it? Okay. We can start reading through this. Since we've adopted it, we can take a look at it. And if we want to make any changes, and then we can move it to a vote at some point. So I want to open this up for debate. Do want to open up the motion for debate? David Crane, go right ahead.
So I've been thinking about what to do. If you read down further, the two therefores, I do want to strike one of them at least, which is the closure of Broome. I think that is where it's going to become a drinking zone. I understand that is illegal and that should be enforced, but enforcement agencies are just too strapped. That is the first therefore there. But I don't know what to think about the other one, the pedestrian Neckdown, you know, below there from Broome down to Delancey. I don't know what to think about that. And I also don't know what we would have to put in here, because we presumably should say that we don't support it as opposed to just striking out the language supporting it. Just that people understand, drafts are usually come to the committee stated in a positive way, and then if we're actually going to be against it, this is when the committee will talk about what we want to do. But we just state it as a support thing when someone has drafted it. But anyway, back to this problem. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to explore how important the neck down along Orchard Street is to the installation, and how risky that seems to be to residents on Orchard. I don't know, how do you want to explore that? Anyway, I'm not making a motion to amend because I don't know what to do.
And with you on this one, David, a little bit, it's a little bit of a tear down and right down the middle.
Yeah.
There's a lot of balancing concerns. Go ahead, David.
Can I ask Tim's opinion, maybe what Tim thinks, or perhaps the DOT rep. I don't know if they would have an opinion.
Hi, David. I'm sorry. Help me understand specifically what you.
Well, the stretch along Orchard Street, how important do you think that is to the purpose of the installation?
So I think that, I guess it's challenging because we've never had to, I guess, you've never had to really kind of think about those pieces. Look, I understand the concerns. I always come from a place where I don't think that, as we've seen pre-COVID, the absence of parking or the fact that there is parking or there is vehicular traffic is going to significantly change conditions, right? Outside of allowing for less horn honking because of for-hire vehicles being able to pull over. So I guess I hear the concern. I definitely think slightly differently just about the space constraints. When you're talking about modified operations, I think that the connections of the museum buildings are really important. So you could, in theory, do a curb extension for that length and forego the larger pedestrian space on Broome. How those groups will be able to kind of gather might look a little bit different. They might, shift. Again, it's kind of hard to tell. We're going to have to, see how things operate in the field. But I think any space would be preferable to no space to avoid a condition where there are complaints about groups and crowds during the day in the current environment.
What about the idea of a daytime treatment? Is that possible? I heard the DOT rep say that was interesting. I mean, if I can paraphrase.
How could they possibly do that?
How possible? What would that look like?
Well, I guess there's a daytime. I guess there's a daytime closure today. I don't know. It's a really good question. I think that, with respect to the plaza space, that's probably a little bit more feasible and easier to execute because you can easily, stop vehicular traffic. With respect to kind of the Neckdown extension and parking, a little bit more difficult. I would say that that's probably the more likely space where you'd want to have, more of a semi-permanent treatment, whether that be a painted surface or a flexible delineator or a planter kind of defining that space is for pedestrians so that there is some type of buffer when there is the potential for vehicular traffic. I think it's easier to do a closure, which exists today, right? The closure exists today in a temporary way for Broome Street. The Neckdown is probably a little bit harder to execute on a kind of temporary daily type basis. I'm not sure we would be able to do that, frankly.
Right. That's what I was thinking as well. And the DOT rep, the treatment that's proposed is paint, or is it paint and planters and such?
Well, I think it's, again, as I mentioned in the beginning of the call, I think it's a TBD. You would have some type of delineation where we're trying to understand, what that would be. And we first wanted to come to discuss, what the potential support for any footprint would be so that we can better go back and really kind of understand the options. That is not a punt. That's more of a just being pragmatic in this environment where, logistically, timelines are really important. Sourcing has become difficult for a lot of different things. We would have to really kind of understand what our options are and come back with a more thoughtful, specific proposal. I think the idea here is to really try to gauge an understanding of what could be possible so we can, try to work within that box.
Okay, so kind of pop back to Broome Street. What is the current closure that happens there? Is it an open street closure like 8 to 5 or something?
So there's an open street, there's an open street closure Monday through Thursday, noon to 8, and Fridays the open street is noon to 5, and then it goes to Open Streets Restaurants, which is 5 to 11, and then Saturdays and Sundays noon to 11. Both those programs have different restrictions, right? So Open Streets Restaurant is no through traffic whatsoever, whereas the Open Streets program does permit locally based traffic and deliveries. Open Streets in and of itself is a little bit more challenging of a program to manage and would likely, have more traffic and even if the street's closed, right? So that's where that kind of delineation of that pedestrian.
Okay, so what happens after 11? What it's completely open to traffic, but there's, except for, I guess, the permanent stalls that the restaurants have put out. Is that what happens?
Yeah, so, well, right now, yes, the vehicular traffic is opened and all restaurant operations must cease no later than 11 p.m. So any activity that's happening on the street past 11 p.m., if it's A, associated with an establishment, they're operating illegally, and B, you know, there is, you know, concern about street activity and things that are occurring at night outside of open streets, you know, that activity is just occurring on the street, right? That's what that is.
Okay. Paul, I can't see you anymore. It's hard for me to do Zoom meetings because I can't, like, you know, gauge the room. There's no room. I see you now, Paul.
There you go.
I was wondering if maybe we could call on one community resident. I don't know, perhaps the Block Association rep, if she is still on the call, and ask similar question, like, what about Broome? What about Orchard? Or
Sure.
perhaps
It was Hope who was on, correct?
Hello, yes?
Go ahead, David. You got a question.
so. Hope.
Yes.
So the Orchard Street segment, how problematic do you believe that would be? You followed the conversation I just had with Tim, I hope, I expect. So
You mean
if that
the-
one was to
the
be,
Neckdown?
yeah, where it would be perhaps painted, perhaps planters, but it would make a safe pedestrian space that would be permanent there. Do you think that part of the thing is problematic, or do you believe it's that the Broome Street is
Which
90% of the
section of,
problem?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Which section of Orchard Street? Do you mean the remaining section between Delancey and Broome, or the part between Broome and Grand?
This goes all the way to Grand? I thought it went, no, it goes to Delancey. So it's Broome to Delancey. That was my question. Do you think that's a problematic section to have, you know, a pedestrian extension established?
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, they have the barriers there.
Yeah.
There's also where the back restaurants are on Allen Street, that there's like a lot of trash and stuff and places already hard to get by over there. So I don't know. Again, what's going on in Orchard and Broome right now is bleeding up all over everything. So again, any place you give more people from Dudley's, from Barrio Chino, from Devon, like people who are just like having mobs and serving after hours and letting people stay out late, like any square foot of space you give the crowds, they'll take it. So that's my point of view on it.
So
I get
I'm
it.
leaning toward
Sentiment.
Broome as being a problem. That making Broome pedestrian zone all the time is going to be a problem after hours, especially if there is alcohol being supplied somehow.
Yeah, I mean,
I
we're playing like at this point with me, it's like, you know, it's like a football game where like every down is another yard grab. And that's how this whole thing occurs for me. It's like, okay, well, this is the first down. They got part of Orchard, and then they're going to come back and huddle and come back for down number 2 and try and take another yard. And then once we give them that, it's like, all right, well, what about the next thing? So that's my concern with it all. It's all just like trying to move the chain down the field.
Okay, so then here's what I think, and what I've decided on the spot here. I think that the Orchard Street one, it's good to increase pedestrian space. That is a very narrow street. So not allowing parking and creating a pedestrian area, I'll support that. That's the further be resolved clause. The first therefore be resolved clause, I don't want to see that happen right now. So I would propose that I move that we delete the first therefore be it resolved clause. We might want to substitute with something different instead, but I'd like to have that debated and decided.
David, before we go to that, and sometimes just thinking about, it doesn't seem to be a lot of strong support behind this resolution tonight based on everything I'm hearing from the community and the questions and the concerns. I don't know if I'm pivoting the wrong way here, correct me if I'm wrong here, David, about seeing what this would look like if it came back in September to committee with something stronger and with the tenement museum represented as well. Because I'm concerned, my thing is I don't know what kind of I know they've been closed, but what, speaking to what Ellen had said before, how will this help them in the grand scheme of things, like in terms of getting their businesses back going, and how much money will they generate? Like just a lot of those things. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of strong support behind this, and I think it's going to go one way. I would rather almost want to see this come back in September, if anything, with something stronger.
Something that'll get stronger support. Is that what you mean by stronger?
Stronger support, and for the resolution, maybe a stronger resolution, maybe with the tenement museum here. I don't know what the urgency is for it to happen tonight. Tim,
well, yeah, sure. So if we decided that we weren't going to pass something tonight, and if that would mean that we also heard that the BID and DOT were willing to come back with something, then my feedback would be, I would love to see it just be Orchard Street. And I would also love to hear a description of why a temporary, like a daytime only thing in Orchard Street would not work. I mean, I'm almost positive it would not work, but I'd like to hear it explained. And the reasons why it should be done from like the tenement museum. I mean, I can explain reasons why I believe it should be done. But I also, anyway, I would like to see that something without a Broome closure come back.
And Paul, so would I.
Michelle, I know you had your hand up before. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Paul. I think I agree. I mean, I worry that we're taking that there's somewhat vociferous opposition from a very limited number of people, and I would want there to be an opportunity, if there are residents that support it, and the tenement museum, just if there's people who want to support it, to come. I mean, I think the agenda item was a little vague maybe, and that's why we didn't have that. So I don't know, I would encourage Tim and the BID and to find, if there are folks that support it or have reasons for it, because there's obviously a couple of people who are very against it, but that's honestly a small number of people. I mean, maybe there's representative, but there seems to be just blanket opposition to anything without really evaluating what the actual proposal is. So that's my concern.
Sure. Paul, it's Tim. So I just specifically, I think, again, like I said, the premise of this conversation and why you don't have a detailed plan was to gauge what you wanted us to focus on with the limited resources that all these agencies, in particular the Department of Transportation, has, right? So if what you're saying is there's a concern about Broome Street, right, and you'd like us to focus on Orchard, like David said, like we should try to get an indication from the committee of what that is. We certainly can ask a representative of the Tenement Museum to attend one of these meetings. I do think, for the record, it's just important to note that, a formal communication in writing from the president of that museum to the chair of the community board, specifically detailing the needs, should be, substantial for the written record. And I would hope it would be included and reflected for the community board record moving forward. And certainly if you would like a representative, I would encourage the office to reach out and we will help coordinate that as needed. But we can do that as well.
I think that's pretty fair. I believe there was one, I'm going to take one final comment. A.O. Harrington, I know she was asked to speak earlier. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I agree that there doesn't seem to be any urgency with regard to this proposal. I know everybody would like to get everything done yesterday, but I think that it's quite disrespectful for anyone to come to the community board, especially people who are, players in this arena and know better, to do so without actually reaching out to formal stakeholders in the neighborhood, such as the Block Association, Community Board 3 several years ago did a really good job of listing all of the formal block associations that exist within CB3. We now have a coalition of those block associations that exist. We recently had a nightlife mayor's office representatives talking about some of the issues that were raised here today for this coalition of block associations. Whether I'm for or against a proposal, and I don't live in that neighborhood, but I live close to A and B in Alphabet City, I would not want someone to bring something to the community board with a resolution, no less, asking for support, no less, without having contacted, at the very, very least, the impacted block associations in that neighborhood. And so I am very glad to hear that this is gonna, that the request is hopefully going to ask them to come back in September or at a future date. But I would ask that this committee insist that the impacted block associations at the very least be contacted and have a discussion about what their concerns are in advance. Thank you.
Paul, can I, before you leave this agenda item, can I just make one comment while the DOT is still here?
Yes.
So I've been spending a tremendous amount of time trying to work with agencies on the issues that were brought up here tonight. And you know, it's not the rep from DOT, it's certainly not her, but I would like her to take back that the agencies are not giving enough serious concern to this. They really, it's important, and they're not dealing with it as much as they should. Sending somebody to a meeting, you know, like a community block meeting or that kind of thing is not enough. There has to be serious enforcement, and it's not happening. And it's going to affect other programs that we do need, because people are going to be afraid of an unplanned impact.
Thank you, Susan. David, did you have something to say? I'm sorry. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think I did. I think what Tim is asking for is a resolution with our input, which we might be able to do in the therefores. If we do that, we need to be very careful that we are not saying that we support something in principle, saying that we would be interested in hearing about this, and we're less interested in hearing about that. And I don't know exactly the language to use for this, but I'm almost positive that is what Tim is looking for.
Right, David, I would even go as far to say as, you know, I think part of the urgency here is these things don't happen overnight. We want to be in a position where when the museum does begin operations, that they're able to execute. And so again, I think that's the reason we're having this conversation in August, is to say, you know, what, you know, there's some good feedback here from this meeting. This is how we, you know, typically engage the community. But I think if the committee had an indication of, well, we'd rather focus on an orchard, right? Like elimination of parking, right? That's a few parking spaces and not Broome. That helps us guide a more detailed planning process so that we can then provide some of those options in a more articulated way, right? That's why we don't have any plans or there's no placement. You know, you're typically in these conversations, you're going to see schematic, engineering pieces, geometry, like that doesn't exist. It's really just kind of blocking. And so even an informal indication of where the committee would like us to proceed is helpful in kind of moving that ball forward in coordination with all the entities that are involved.
Okay, well, my view on it then, informal is usually what we do. That's what we've done up till now. And feedback is sort of taken back. Now, I will also say that I often find that lacks democratic, you know, it's just not democratic, because the loudest person in the room, which, you know, I confess is sometimes me, got the most input there, and just because we didn't take a vote doesn't necessarily mean that that is where we want to go. Now, in this situation, I don't think that that's where we are. So I don't know that coming to a vote saying we would rather we would rather see something more like this than more like that. I don't know, guys. We've been on this for over an hour.
Yeah. Ellen, go ahead, and then I'm going to close this up. Go ahead.
So Tim, do you really need feedback from us via a resolution, or is this enough? Is this discussion enough of a take back for you to bring back to your people and brainstorm and then bring something back to us in September?
Look, I think it is enough. I think that, based on this, obviously, we'll kind of focus on Orchard Street and see what we can come up with there, right? And bring something back, knowing that it seems as though most committee members have expressed that would be the area of focus. So I think that's enough for us. Again, this is just an iterative process. With respect to parking pieces. So I think that is helpful.
Then if I can also second as my input, that I also think that it would be good if you could have a conversation with, helpful to work with the Block Association to hear their concerns, perhaps have a Zoom meeting which was jointly sponsored or something of that nature. Could be helpful.
I would say not just helpful, but mandatory. It's a requirement. It has to. There have been too many incidents. There are too many proposals or suggestions along this area that have not included feedback from block associations over the last year. And I am tired of seeing that. I want, as Io mentioned, there's a list of block associations. Lower East Side knows everybody who's involved in the community. This should not have been the first outreach tonight.
Thank you, Lee. That being said, I think we want to move this to September. At the very least, September. Not that this came up on and snuck up on us, but it's definitely snuck up on what it sees. It seems like the community has a lot of input on it, and I think everybody needs to really work in conjunction together to figure this out before they really bring it to us for a resolution and something we can write up and clear up with the community. And everybody has an input, the block associations, the bid, the tenement museum. I know we have a letter from the tenement museum, but that's just not enough. We had questions for them too. So I understand it. Something more open, something more transparent. That way everybody can work together and get this done. And just follow up on what Lee said. Yeah, something that's the whole community can get behind.
And I'm going to ask that Tim bring the tenement museum to support the issue.
Yes, that would be great.
As opposed to me.
Okay, we can pull this motion off, correct, David? I can.
Well, let's have a motion to postpone this indefinitely. Okay. It'll come back in some nature. So I'll move to postpone indefinitely, which is to not deal with it tonight.
Can somebody second that so that we can move on?
Okay.
Does everybody agree with that? We're good, committee?
Yes.
We're good with that? Okay, we're gonna postpone it indefinitely. So Lee, for the minutes that we are postponing this agenda item indefinitely. Okay, we're gonna move on. I'm gonna deviate a little bit from the agenda for today. There was an issue that was brought to our attention a little earlier today. Greer Mayhew from State Senator Brian Kavanaugh's office wanted to get input from the community, but we can't really discuss this item. I know there's an issue with the East Broadway train station, if I'm correct. Susan, correct me if I'm wrong. I know we got this really late. If Greer wants to leave his information for the community to reach out to him. I know there's going to be a big project from the MTA in regards to the East Broadway train station. Greer, if you want to just speak to it really quickly, I'll give you about a minute, and then we'll move on.
Sure, no problem. Hello, everyone. My name is Broome from Senator Kavanaugh's office. Really briefly, a few months ago, our office was notified about a project that MTA was doing in regards to Rutgers Tube, which is a tube that runs between East Broadway in Manhattan and York Street in Brooklyn. And as a part of their construction project, they have proposed that they will be closing the East Broadway station for a select number of weekends and certain weekend nights from September until March, I believe. And so in regards to that, we wanted, along our office, along with other offices, asked MTA to provide, to create an opportunity for the public to be engaged and a public forum to be scheduled. We're in the process of making that, and one of their requests was for them to better outline their presentation for the community. They wanted to know what concerns and what questions they want highlighted during that presentation. So I asked Ms. Etzer, and she suggested we have a conversation here at the committee.
No, I think it was to send the questions to you.
Right, okay, right.
So if anybody on the call has questions for Greer, Greer, if you could leave your information in the chat room, that would be great. I know about potentially setting up a meeting with the community in regards to the situation. They can reach out to your office directly. And thank you for coming on. I know this was a little last minute, it's not an agenda item, but I just wanted to give you that time.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem. If you just leave your information in the chat room, that'd be great. All right, we're gonna move on to the next agenda item, which is our district needs statement and finalizing it tonight. Sorry, I'm gonna pull it up.
Sorry, the chat is disabled. I'm unable to put it in.
Is the chat closed?
Hold on, I can barely, 1 second.
Perfect.
Maybe you can just read it out.
Yeah, sorry, Greer, you can post that. I just chatted you.
Perfect, I got it, okay.
All right, thank you, Greer. All right. So let's pull up our district needs statement. Shut it off. I'll share my screen, Michelle. Don't worry, I have it up. So I know we are looking to finalize this tonight. So I believe the stats have been updated. All the revisions have been made. I did send out the district needs statement on last night to the committee to look over. Do we have any final questions? We can start looking over. We can, well, not start. We've been looking at it for the past 2 months. Just if we have any questions, comments, concerns. Susan, did you have any questions or concerns?
No, I think everything people asked for has been done. You can see like the new environment section, that kind of thing. So as far as I can tell, everything's been addressed, everything's been updated.
So here's the new environment section. I know David did the rewrite. Thank you, David, for that. Moving in. Does the committee have any questions so far? Or do we like it now as is? How we've changed it up? I got a thumbs up from Michelle. David?
I suppose, although now I'm looking at it, I'm a little horrified that it seems to be half of it is now environment section again.
Lee, did you get a chance to see the public safety portion and the write-up? And I know you had questions about it before. Is there a change up that you wanted to make or anything?
It's fine.
It's fine, okay. Michelle, you had a thumbs up. Ellen, how are we doing? Ellen, we're good. I'm just.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm just going around asking everyone's opinion. How do you feel about the District E statement after the write-ups?
I'm good.
Okay. Tariq, are you able to communicate with us right now? I know you were commuting. I know you have a situation going on.
It looks good. I read it last night.
That's the plan. Wendy, what do you think?
Looks good to me.
Oh, I'm liking this. Okay. I think it's good. I think we did a good job. Michelle. David, do you still have questions about the environment section that you wrote, or are you okay with it now?
I mean, I'm okay with it. I wrote it, but it just feels long now compared to the rest of it. This is a risk when I get assigned a writing task. Susan.
Try to cut it as much as possible.
Okay.
Anyway, we did move stuff into an appendix, the even more detail. Yeah, there was.
Okay. Well, I just want to say this. I'm glad we got a public safety section in there this year for this district needs. I know we didn't have it previously, so I'm glad we got that in. I'm glad we got some rewrites. It looks a little different from last year when I got a chance to see it the first time. I think we all did a pretty good job with this. I think we're good.
It's way too late to add anything.
Yes.
But when I read that rats one, it just struck me that like, oh my goodness, are mosquitoes the problem this year as opposed to rats, or what?
No.
No, I know it's way too late for anything, but the mosquitoes are really dreadful this year. I don't know exactly why that has happened, and I don't know if these are, terrible, no good, disease-carrying mosquitoes or not.
They're not. They are not.
They're not.
No, we meet with Department of Health at least once a month, and they always let us know when there's Nile disease and that kind of stuff. There is no health issue, and it probably would be a health issue anyway, but there is not. Mosquitoes are annoying. But you don't need to vote on it tonight. We're just kind of resolving it. If anything happens between now and October, you have the option of including it.
Okay, so we're finalized with it at this point. If there's no vote needed, we can just move on.
We'll vote on it in October.
What's up, Michelle?
Susan in the office for all their hard work on this, and David as well.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it unfortunately too often goes without saying, but this district needs statement could not exist without Susan's focus on it. And Jim helps tremendously as well.
Thank you.
Yes, the updating the stats, the back and forth emails, the rewriting and writing of sections, and eliminating words and revisions. Thank you so much. That you've helped us out tremendously. Okay, that was the last agenda item. When do we vote on it, Susan? I'm sorry.
In October, we will have budget the capital and expense priorities to vote on with this in October.
Copy. All right. Well, once again, thanks to the office and to the committee for the input on this. We have gotten this done. Just a couple of announcements before we close up for the night. It's almost 8 o'clock. I want to thank Lee for doing the minutes the past 2 months. And I also want to thank Ellen, who did it in June. As everyone knows, Michelle is our assistant secretary for the full board. So she does minutes for executive committee and full board. So she does everything else. So I know and she helps administrate this Zoom meeting If I miss something, she's quick to remind me, and vice versa, and anything of that sort. That being said, we have some new members. We have Wendy, we have Tariq. David's not so new. Everybody else is not so new. Michelle, Lee, Ellen. I'm gonna write an email about this anyway towards the end of the week. I'm looking for somebody to be the permanent secretary of the committee. I know we've kind of tried out a couple of people over the past couple months, and I greatly appreciate it. And I know not everyone is ready to run up to that challenge. But if it's something you would like to do, please let me know. I will send an email out to the committee. Once again, I wholeheartedly thank Lee and Ellen for doing it the past few months while, this weird time of Zoom and pandemic, while we're all away from each other, it gets difficult at sharing screens and going and muting chats and all that stuff. It gets a little bit much. So like I said, I'm looking for a permanent secretary for the committee so we can continue this good flow we have going. If somebody wants to step up tonight, that would be great. If not, you can hold off. Don't worry. You don't have to go to the confessional just yet. I can send an email, and if anybody wants to step up to the plate for it, that would be great. It would be easier instead of just trying to chase people down like a week before the committee meeting to say, hey, would you like to do minutes? So I'm gonna ask the whole committee outside of myself and Michelle later on this week if that's something you're willing to do. I have a feeling the September agenda might be a little bit packed, especially since we may have moved this and we moved agenda item number 2 indefinitely. I have a feeling that's going to come back in September anyway. If it's something somebody wants to take on, that'd be great. Other than that, I want to just thank the committee for their hard work over these past couple months. It's been very tough. We've done a lot. We've had a lot of unexpected stuff that's come to us as a committee, a lot more than I think was initially anticipated, with open streets, open restaurants, the police issue really taking light hold. But we have a lot of stuff going on, and whoever wants to say anything, please let me know. If you have any questions, always let me know, and that's about it. So once again, thank you, Lee, for doing minutes for tonight. Thank you, Michelle, for all your hard work as vice chair. David, go ahead. Your hand is up.
Yeah, that's not volunteering necessarily. I just want to plug to have new members step up and do this. This is not difficult, but there is the responsibility that the minutes have to be promptly returned back to the chair so that they can get processed through the office. This is how the vote sheet happens. It really can't be late, but it's not a lot of detailed note taking. It's capturing every to-do item, every action item coming out of a meeting, and capturing every change in text for motions that are being drafted. Those are really the two things. It's not like this is a detailed minutes that you might see for, I don't know, something else. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Like I said, I'm very appreciative of everything we've done as a committee and everything you have done coming on every, is it first Tuesday or second Tuesday of each month to committee. It's not easy work, but I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I guess we're going to close this up for a final vote to close it up. Go ahead, Lee.
All right, Paul Rangel.
Yes.
Michelle Coopersmith.
Yes.
David Crane.
Yes.
Wendy Lee.
Yes.
Lee Berman. Yes. Alicia Cruikshank. Ellen Lowe.
Yes.
And Tariq Ramos.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we can call it a night. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care,
Good
everybody.
night.